Before the glitz, the glamour, and the glory. Before Michael Jordan. Before Irvin Magic Johnson. Before Julius Dr. J. Irvin. Before Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Before Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. Before basketball as we know it today. There was a pioneer, a man who paved the way for all of today's stars. A man who helped knock down the barriers of racism in the NBA, showing the rest of the world that African Americans know how to play the game of basketball on the highest level. Earl Lloyd, the first African American in the NBA, has never truly received his just due for being the first in a sport that is now dominated by African Americans. Hi, I'm Derek Limas of Jones Communications, and welcome to a Spotlight special about Earl Lloyd, a living legend. Back in the early 1940s, Earl Lloyd attended Parker Gray High School and grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, a segregated but close-knit community.
Well, I live in the section of town that is down by the river. They call that, what do they call that now down there? Is that Old Town?
Yes, Old Town.
Well, then they call it the Burg.
Okay, well they still have the
Burg.
Burg.
Yeah,
Okay.
the Burg is still there, and that was considered the toughest part of town. But Alexandria was, well, you're right there in the cradle of segregation.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to come together, man, just to survive. I used to listen to them talk about separate but equal. And I used to look at our school, I looked at George Washington High School. Mm-hmm. And I was a pretty good student, so I knew that something was wrong here, We definitely separate. But I'd be damned if we were equal.
Okay, right? I understand that. Right.
Earl went on to become a three-sport star in football, basketball, and baseball. In baseball, he was a strikeout artist as a pitcher, and in one game against Dunbar, he had 14 strikeouts. His team was a force to be reckoned with for the Negro High School Baseball Championship. In basketball, Earl was thought of as a coach's dream, and at 6'4", he was a good pivot man who commanded the respect of every team he faced. Earl, along with teammates Ware, Jackson, Burtz, Ellis, McGee, Rice, and Bailey, helped Parker Gray win the South Atlantic High School Athletic Championship. Earl played center like a veteran professional and received all-star honors. But his high school career wasn't always this way.
First night, when we first had a team, we were awful.
Awful?
Awful.
Okay.
Because I think the first year we went to Richmond, we played Armstrong in Richmond, and they had to put new nets up at the half. They beat us so bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so they were torching the nets then?
Definitely. And we didn't know anything about organized.
So how did y'all get better?
We got better. Coach Johnson, who was that coach, he really brought the game to us, as far as I'm concerned. And as far as organized ball, we played a lot of sandlot ball and stuff like that. But to be organized as a team, it was a new experience for all of us.
So once you got organized,
it became a good.
Then y'all were the ones that were torching the nets.
Became pretty good.
Earl went on to graduate with honors in 1946 and was one of the school's greatest athletes. He was a respectable young man who at the time had a lot of neighborhood kids looking up to him, and he didn't disappoint them.
He was a senior, and I was a freshman. And we tried to, in fact, everybody looked up to the seniors in our school in Parker Gray. And Earl would come to school every day, dressed the best that he could dress at that time. And we would always try and imitate the seniors. And he never was a person that would just, if he knew you and knew that you were a youngster, he took you under his wing. And I used to serve papers.
Really?
Papers, and Sunday mornings, his mother used to have hot rolls and milk for me when I stopped by and delivered papers on Sunday morning to his home. And Earl has been to my home, my grandmother's home, and he's just a nice fella.
In the fall of 1946, Earl went on to accept a basketball scholarship to West Virginia State University, and during his college years, he would make a lasting impression on people. One such person, the legendary Winston-Salem State coach, Clarence Big House Gaines, remembers when he first saw Earl, he knew his team was in trouble because Earl could run up and down the court better than any big man they had ever faced. At West Virginia State, Earl earned the nickname the Moon Fixer because of his great size, and at 6'6", he was a CIAA star, and in the 1948-49 season, led his team to the CIAA championship and was named to the Black College All-American team. Earl's college days were some of the defining moments in his life.
At West Virginia State is where you learn, I mean, you have roommates, and people you spend a lot of time with together. You learn about relationships, how to be considerate, how not to be inconsiderate. And I just grew up there.
Right.
It was a great place to grow up because it was a nurturing place where everybody kind of adopted you. I mean, we were isolated. We were out there in 1946 in segregated West Virginia.
Right.
And you had to come together just to survive. So I learned about relationships, attitudes, survival tactics. You know.
Okay.
Today in the NBA, you see a lot of African-American ball players, but in 1950, the NBA was an all-white league. That year, Earl was drafted by the Washington Capitals, along with two other African-Americans, Nat Sweetwater Clifton by the New York Knicks, and Chuck Cooper by the Boston Celtics. In late October, Earl made history by becoming the first African-American to play in an NBA game. Red Auerbach, the legendary Boston Celtic coach, said that Earl could block shots and play defense like there was no tomorrow. Earl was very coordinated and agile for a man his size.
You have to understand that my whole educational process, from kindergarten to finishing college, and I never functioned with white people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you finish college, you're drafted by pro team. Your first contact with white people is at this level of competition.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that creeps into your mind is that you've been a second-class citizen all your life, and you played what they think is inferior competition, and some doubts creep in as to whether or not you would belong here.
Mm-hmm.
But after about 4 or 5 days of training camp, a light came on and said, you belong here. And for a young black kid from Virginia, that is truly a defining moment.
Right.
When you learn very quickly that you belong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest thought ran through my mind.
Uh-huh.
And once that was over, the rest was all, it was like a sleigh ride downhill.
Could you basically tell me some of the things that would happen if you feel like it? Some of the things that would happen when you went on the road. I mean, playing in the NBA. Back at that time, segregation was still in effect. Tell me, how was it on a road trip?
Well, it depends what town you went into. If you went to Indianapolis,
Uh-huh.
it's a tough road trip.
Okay.
Indianapolis was probably, of all the towns we played in, was probably the worst town.
Uh-huh.
I mean, traditions died hard in Indianapolis, man.
Uh-huh.
Baltimore was a tough town.
Really?
Oh yeah, very tough. They didn't, it was a while before they opened up the Lloyd Baltimore Hotel to black folks right in Baltimore. Fort Wayne, Indiana was tough.
Mm-hmm.
St. Louis, Missouri was tough.
Okay.
And when I say tough, I'm talking about like you go into Fort Wayne, Indiana, at the Van Ormond Hotel, they would allow you, to sleep in the hotel, but they wouldn't let you eat in the hotel.
Oh, okay.
Because I was shocked that they let me sleep in the hotel.
Right. Well, I'm halfway there,
Yeah, but basically, it's I had no problems with teammates
Mm-hmm.
or even opposing teams.
Mm-hmm.
But fans, that was a different story.
Mm-hmm. So the fans were pretty.
I didn't call you names, but my thing was, and I was asked this question before. I said, well, I was prepared for name calling by experts. Mm-hmm. I said, playing ball, they call you names when you were hurting them. In Virginia, then they called that was like your first name,
Right.
While segregation was still in effect, Earl was drafted by Uncle Sam into the U.S. Army.
I was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Uh-huh.
It was a dastardly place.
Mm-hmm.
And this was 1952. I mean, Truman didn't integrate the service till 54.
Okay.
So you still had separate quarters. And we had all black troops, all white officers, and you had a separate club, officers club. I mean, the whole thing, you know. But it was the bus came on the post, the city bus. On the post, you could ride anywhere you wanted to ride, but the minute the bus left the post, you had to go to back of the bus. So it was a tough place, and you got a little angry. You know, I mean, it didn't consume you. When we used to play, we had company teams, and when we played those all-white teams, we played hard.
Played real hard, right? I understand.
Yeah, we played real hard. I mean, you didn't try to hurt anybody.
Right, no, you just play hard, aggressive.
You just beat them as bad as you could.
Uh-huh.
You try to make a statement.
Okay. Tell me, how, being a NBA player, but you were drafted and you were in the service, were you treated any differently, or were you just another serviceman?
Just another soldier.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened that my company commander was the only West Pointer in the whole battalion. He's from New York. He was very fair, tough. He loved basketball. And if you recall, in 1950, a whole bunch of guys from college got drafted into the Army. Mm-hmm. So we had a team comprised of all college guys.
Right.
So we could play.
Mm-hmm.
We could play. So he took care of us.
He took care of you?
I probably played my best ball in the Army, man, to keep him going overseas, man.
Really?
Hey, man.
When Earl finished serving his military duty, he returned to the NBA and the Syracuse Nationals. During this stop in Syracuse, Earl and another teammate, Jim Tucker, would become the first African Americans to win an NBA championship. The year was 1955. During that championship run, the Nationals beat the famed Boston Celtics with their future Hall of Famers, Bob Cousy and Bill Sharman. In that game that eliminated Boston, Earl poured in 22 points and grabbed a bunch of rebounds to give his team the edge. Earl would earn the nickname Big Cat because of his size and quickness.
Well, you felt good because that's why you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ultimate goal in professional sports is to win a championship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like any other thing, it had no special meaning because it was two of us, one of them Jim Tucker. We the first blacks to play on a championship team in pro basketball to win a title.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that didn't go unnoticed, but that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing is you're athletes playing on a team that year you're the best in the whole world.
In 1960, Earl finished his playing career with the Detroit Pistons and went on to become the team's first black head coach.
It takes a lot to get there.
Uh-huh.
I mean, somebody has to think you got some knowledge to hire you.
Right.
But it's a known fact in professional sports, if you lose, you get fired. We lost, and consistent with the times, I got fired.
Right.
And no grudges. I mean, I was blessed to have had the chance.
Yes.
There's a lot of folks who never get the chance,
Mm-hmm.
But timing is important. Maybe the timing wasn't right,
Mm-hmm.
But I had my chance, I had my shot, And people ask you, are you bitter? Man, bitterness it takes a lot of energy to be bitter.
Mm-hmm.
After his NBA days were over, Earl started working with the inner city youth in Detroit. Because of his background and his upbringing, Earl had a great impact on youngsters and was a positive influence on the lives of the youngsters in Alexandria as well as the metropolitan area.
There have been a lot of people who have been associated and influenced a lot of us in our lives. Some people who played a bigger role than others. And Earl Lloyd, very early on, Derek, had an influence on me because there weren't that many black assistant coaches who were recruiting me 200 years ago when I was in high school. And Earl Lloyd was one of those guys. And he impressed me as being a very strong, very confident, and a very genuine man. And my good friend Steve Martin has been keeping me abreast of all that Earl has done throughout this community, how many people he's touched. So when you have that kind of person around, you got to come over and support them and celebrate them and recognize them in any way possible.
He's a legend, but the way he carries himself, you don't think of him as a legend. He's just Earl Lloyd.
Right.
Earl, or big man, or when you see you by yourself, he might call you something else. But
right.
He is, to say that he's a legend to other people. He's a legend to me also, but I don't look at him as a legend. I look at him as Earl Lloyd.
Earl has been a mentor for me all of my life. He used to come back and run the playgrounds in Alexandria, and so I probably met him when I was about 10 or 12 years old.
So what type of impact did Earl Lloyd have on your life, if any?
Well, where do we start?
You can start at the beginning.
Okay.
We have a lot of tape.
Clearly, next to my father, he's the single biggest male influence in my life. Earl assisted in helping me to get my scholarship to West Virginia University. He had played with the Syracuse Nationals with a gentleman named George King, who was the head coach at West Virginia University, and recommended me to go there. When I graduated, he assisted me in getting my first job with Chrysler Corporation in Detroit. And then shortly thereafter, a couple of years later, assisted me again in getting into coaching, which I've done now for the last 30 years. So tremendous influence on my life, someone I truly love and respect.
So the term "each one teach one" basically applies to the relationship you and Earl have had?
No question. And not just me, but I would say every person of my generation from Alexandria. We didn't know him as Earl, the NBA player. He was a man who came back and worked with us in the summers, again on the playgrounds, and substitute taught at our high school, Parker Gray High School. And but I've had the good fortune of continuing that relationship into my adult life.
I can't remember the first time that I met Earl Lloyd. I'm not sure if it was in Philadelphia when I was just a pup and I was hanging around with Bobby Jones, Woody Salisbury, and I had an imitation idea that I might become a pro basketball player, because at that time Philly and New York was one of the hotbeds. So, and then I met Earl again while I was at Morgan State through Coach Banks when he would come through. And then I found out about his stature. And I really did think I really thought that you were 6'9". I really did. And I said, dang, that's a lot of height. But a man so large in stature, and so large in what he has accomplished in the world, was really, really humble, because anytime any one of us youngsters would ask questions, ask for advice, he'd always give it to you without any refrain from anything. And I was really adamant about being one of his supporters, but he didn't know it, because if you're one of the trailblazers in a situation where all the cards are stacked against you, yet you achieve it and overcome the hurdles, it comes from within, and within the community, and within the family structure.
In May 1993, Earl was inducted into the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and on February 1999, 28 years after being selected to the 25th anniversary all-time great CIAA team, he was inducted into the CIAA Hall of Fame. Earl now lives in Detroit with his wife Charlie and works in community relations for another area basketball legend, Dave Bing. When you talk to people about Earl, you hear the words nice, kind, sincere, deep-rooted, and joyful. Earl always left people with a good feeling. On February 27, 1999, Harold Bell and Kids in Trouble organization held a reception and salute in Earl's honor at Bolling Air Force Base. Schoolmates, colleagues, and friends came out to honor him. People were just honored to be in attendance.
And I was amazed, I was amazed that with the media attention on athletes today, that there has never, in my mind, or remember any media hype about Earl Lloyd. Earl, Big Cat Lloyd, they called him. He was the first big man, and they had people on TV saying that, like Red Auerbach and other quotes of coaches way back when, that he was the first big man, true big man, 6'9", 6'10", that ran like a little guy. Mm-hmm. And for somebody to have that kind of ability and be the first black American to participate in the NBA, I don't understand where the media's been. It's amazing to me that this guy hasn't had his acclaim or had his day in the national media. And it hurt when I thought about it. I said, no, that's terrible. And indeed, that's what black Americans go through throughout their lives. You know, we who may not be of much ilk don't even know about those that have truly done something great. And that's wrong. And being in America, in our society, the way we talk about our history, to not know about Earl Lloyd, it's terrible. It's a terrible thing. And that just goes through the isms that we go through in this country. And, you know, I was intent on being here today to meet and greet him.
I've always got that kind of support from this man, and I sincerely hope is that they think that I've become the kind of person they expected me to be. That's more important than anything I can think of, man. That's more important than championship rings,
right,
or winning championships, or playing pro ball. When people, man, that you grew up with, and you've been knowing for, I'm 70, and I grew up in Alexandria, so I mean, people I've been knowing for 65 years,
right,
going back to kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when they tell you, because they know you, man, when they tell you that we think you've become the kind of person that we expect you to be, it gets no better than that.
Well, one thing is a surprise, and it's a great honor, because I don't think either one of us realized where we would be. This would happen at this time and stage in our life, you know, because this is too far-fetched.
Really?
And it's been an honor to be here.
So this is like when y'all were growing up, this is not something that you envisioned?
No, true. We played ball together in high school, Sandlot, and we actually were on the dream team together at the same time, and just like a family member. Mm-hmm. Down through the years right now, we've lost quite a bit of our family, you know, the guys that passed, but we were knitted, pretty well knitted, as a ball club and as friends and as a community.
I brought my grandson over to meet him,
mm-hmm,
to get his autograph. He said, Granddaddy, I've heard so much about this fella. He said, I'm glad to have met him.
You know, anytime there's anything for Earl, I'll be there. We had a great Earl Lloyd weekend a few years back in Alexandria,
mm-hmm,
and it was a great turnout at T.C. Williams High School for a game that evening and subsequent events the next 2 days. And we visited this past summer when I was in Detroit and had a nice dinner that evening. And anytime you mention Earl, I'll be there. So, you know, I'm just glad, again, you're talking about each one teach one. My son had a chance to meet Earl that Earl Lloyd weekend in Alexandria,
right,
and he's here again today. And just to have a chance to pass that wisdom that Earl imparted in me now to my son is a real treat.
I decided that, you know, that we need to say thank you to people who make contributions. I started this in 1976. I thanked my whole high school faculty of Spingarn High School. I had a luncheon for them and brought my principal and all the teachers out and said thank you. The next year I did it for my coach Dave Brown because he was the one that saved my life. In fact, my junior high school principal, Mr. William B. Stinson, said I wouldn't live to get to high school. So I'm in overtime. I am really in overtime. So from there, we went to salute to Willie Wood, salute to Jim Brown, salute to Roy Jefferson, salute to folks who have really reached back and helped other people without a cut card. I mean, guys like Roy, Willie, Sam Jones, You know, they help people and don't look for anything in return. And that's what it's all about. You know, the funny thing about us is I remember when I putting this thing together for Earl, people started asking questions, who is he? In fact, they sent out an FBI report on me to find out who I was. Did he play with Earl? Hey, we got to do more of this, man. Because we cannot wait for the Washington Post, the Washington Times, to validate who we are and where we came from.
Back in 1954, when the schools were still segregated, I was at a high school, Anacostia, and I put together an all-high team from the white kids that played to play the Stonewall AC, which had the legendary Elgin Rabbit Baylor, who was at Spingarn, and they had Ernie the Hand Warwick, who was playing right here at Bolling, both football and basketball, and they had quite a few others, including Elgin's two brothers, Kermit and Sal. And so the first game we played at Turrell Junior High, and some of you might have been there, but there were over 2,000 people packed into that gym to see the game. And it was a monumental thing, but most of my players were threatened and didn't play, and there were a couple players from Western High School that did, Jimmy Wexler and Jack Dade and Frank Cohen, along with myself and several others that I recruited. Well, we went, the next two games we played at old Capitol Arena, Turner's Arena, 1300 block of W Street, Northwest. So the third game, Mr. John Jones, who was running Stonewall's basketball team, said, you got to perk this one up a little bit. Got to perk this one up. So we made Earl the honorary head coach of the team I had put together, and we had Archie Moore there to give luggage to Rabbit Baylor, who was headed to the College of Idaho, which was his first school before he went to Seattle. And I was looking at the pictures outside, and I saw a player that that Earl bought. I keep thinking Harold and Earl, I'm getting mixed up. But anyway, Earl bought, but I saw him in a football uniform. It was Oliver Ellis, and I remember Oliver Ellis did very well in this game. And he was Earl bought him and helped us, but it still didn't matter. We lost. So we lost 3 games to Baylor's team. But I remember Earl playing because, as I was telling him out there, I remember Bill Sharman and Dick Schnichter, one of the dirtiest players around, were members of the Washington Capitals. They were young guys that they had drafted, and then the team disbanded, and they went everywhere. Okay, wait a second. I got to present. Whoa. Man, and I can't even sing with his voice. But I'd like to call Earl up here because I know we're in D.C. I know he's from Virginia, but Governor Paris Clendenning gave this to me to give to him, a governor's citation. And I won't read it because I'm already out of my 2 minutes, right? Earl, congratulations.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Several weeks ago, when Harold called and asked me to participate in this program for Earl, I was elated. However, when Harold asked me to make a speech, having never made a speech, I was somewhat reluctant to come forward. However, after watching my friend make his last presentation, and Harold has insisted that it will only be a 2-minute situation, then I'm not going to, I guess, give the speech that I had written. What I would like to do, though, is I think it is extremely important that we as African Americans not wait for others to honor African Americans. I think we need to do something ourselves, no matter what the ramifications may or may not be. So I'm not gonna, I know there are others that would like to speak. I would simply like to present Earl a CD that I personally hooked up, and hopefully he will enjoy it. I understand that he does like jazz, and I understand he likes Charles Earl. So I put this together specifically for this occasion. So hopefully, Earl, you will enjoy this CD.
That I'm proud to be here to be with Earl and remember the old days and everything. And I don't know, I hadn't planned on seeing him today.
Just go there and hug him there, baby. All right.
Very much, Harold, for including me on something that West Virginia State alumni should have done a long time ago. That was the first reaction I had to your announcement that you were going to do something to give recognition to my schoolmate, Earl Lloyd. West Virginia State, I don't want to try to spend my time talking about that too much, but the team at West Virginia State that Earl Lloyd played on was itself a historic occasion. They played Hawaii, they played all over the country, they played semi-professional teams, they played in the white colleges and so forth. So we were very proud of them, and of course when I was living in Boston during the time that Earl was playing pro, you know, we take a lot for granted. And as the gentleman said a moment ago, there's no reason why there shouldn't have been considerably more exposure of the talents and reputation that Earl, except he's a very modest person himself, but he was, when he came to West Virginia State, and I think we came around the same time, I was a veteran, and we were in the back room a moment ago, and we were talking about a young lady who was there at the same time. And he said, well, you know, I thought you were, perhaps you married her, but then I remembered you were very mature. So he's a diplomat too, because I did start college after having been in the war. So I just want to extend my appreciation for the recognition, Earl, and say that I'm sorry that I don't see more West Virginia State alumni whom I recognize. But that doesn't mean they're not here, because as we get older, we change, you know. Thank you so much.
And for you, Mr. Lloyd, the NBA pro basketball held the dreams of many back, for it had built a solid wall barring players who were black. The road was lonely up ahead, but there lay a bright new dawn. It took some special soul to tread where no other one had gone. Upon the scene appeared Earl Lloyd, and his skills came into play. With all those tools that he employed, he helped chip that wall away. Soon others were to follow suit. Through the roadblocks he would clear. Today, we honor and salute a courageous pioneer. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd.
I am the third member of that group that Earl threw the water on all the time. Nune, Nane, and Amina. Earl pulled a lot of pranks on us, and his mother never wanted to hear it. Earl and I sort of lost touch for a while as we grew up, because of course Earl was a lot older than we are. But we got together again. I think Earl and Bubba were roommates in West Virginia. And when Earl and them got out of school, we began to travel around a lot with a couple of other friends, and we got to be good friends again. The only thing I have to say is, I love you, Earl, and I wish you the best.
I want you folks to take a look at the program, because there's some telephone numbers in there that you need to call and fax. You know, I do a radio show in Portland, Oregon every Monday called Inside Sports. And I got a friend out there named John Phillips. And John and I decided right after we had Earl on that John said he was going to get his listening audience to fax letters, call, send to the NBA why this man is not in the NBA Hall of Fame. Now listen to me, hold it. Not to be in the NBA Hall of Fame because he's the first black. This man was an impact ball player. This man dominated the boards, played great defense, and they weren't keeping any statistics. So how can they say he don't belong in the Hall of Fame when they don't know how many rebounds he got, how many block shots he got? So I'm saying, you know, y'all talking about doing something, standing up something. We stand up for all the wrong things and all the wrong people. We do. Y'all celebrating Grease Man gone. You know Grease Man gonna pop up somewhere else again. They look out for each other. The Grease Man will be right back. All of a sudden, all these Donnie Simpson and Bernie McCain, now they want to be black because this is a safe issue. This is a safe issue. This is the kind of man we're supposed to be supporting. We always want to jump on the safe issues. Red lines, that's who you be celebrating and got convicted. Those are the kind of folks we need out of here. Man, stand up for somebody who means something to us, who's had some impact, made contributions. Got people out here pimping our community and we supporting them. We supporting them. I'm telling you.
But now the Moon Fixer and I go back to the barracks. We lived in the barracks at West Virginia State College, all right? Now, they talk about basketball. He also went out for football. They threw him a pass out in the flat, and the corner linebacker, the linebacker and the corner safety jacked him up out there, and he walked off the field and told coach he had too much legs for him to be beaten on, and he quit. Now, also, now you look at those feet down there, right? He would get on the mound, and when he'd cock that leg up, all you could see was the bottom of the foot until he released the ball, and it was halfway down there. You were in trouble. He also, and I was with him, and it was such stuff. We went out on the West Coast. It was 1949. Played against Bill Russell, Sam Jones, in the Cow Palace. 3 games, we won 1. There was such people on the team. The first team is Joe Gillum, Bum Clark, Bob Wilson, Rock, and who was that other one? Earl Nunn, and the Moon Fixer. Now, I was a trainer. The coach used to tell me at night, say, we get in town, and coach say, well, you take charge, because he had other things to do. Say, put him to bed at 10 o'clock. Okay. There I was, 18 years old. I told him, go to bed. They say, son, you go to bed, you need to sleep, and don't bother us.
Good evening, Mr. Lloyd, and petitioners of this place. I'm honored to be here with you, and a couple of friends the other day we were down the Elks home talking about Earl Lloyd and Alexandria, and I said, well, what could we do? And Johnny Boy Taylor said, well, you paint. I said, yeah, John, I paint. So that was on a Friday, this Friday, Mr. Lloyd. And I said, well, okay, John, I said, give it to me and I'll see what I could do. And George, being a George too, you know how it goes. Mr. Lloyd, this is for you.
Earl.
Earl, you know you are a member of Alexandria Lodge 48, right?
Yes, sir.
So Earl, so the brothers got together and say, we're going to give you this tonight. It says, Earl Lloyd, Alexandria's finest. From Alexandria Lodge number 48 of the Improved, Benevolent, and Protective Order of the World, February 28, 1999. Earl, this is from us, from our heart.
We appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Thank you, Earl.
They say Albert Birch, but my name is originally Albert Eggy Birch. All right. I have here, and I'm very surprised because they just asked me today to do this, and I'm very honored because I've known Earl all my life, and we played ball together, we was raised together, went to high school together. But then truly, I cannot present him this proclamation from the city of Alexandria without saying, I am not the only one presenting it to you. It's also coming from the Dream Team. And right here, this proclamation is presented by the mayor and members of the City Council of Alexandria, Virginia. And the proclamation says, whereas Earl Lloyd is a native Alexandrian and a product of the Alexandria school system, and whereas Earl was an outstanding athlete at Parker Gray High School, where he excelled in football, baseball, and basketball, and whereas he attended West Virginia State and was an All-American college basketball player, and whereas in 1950, Earl graduated from West Virginia State and was drafted by the NBA's Washington Capitals, and whereas he became the first Afro-American to play in the NBA, and whereas he and teammate Jim Tucker made history in 1955 when they became the first to play on an NBA championship team, and whereas Mr. Lloyd currently works in community relations for the Bing Group, a steel and auto part company located in Detroit, Michigan. And whereas, in honor of Black History Month, there will be a special salute to Earl Lloyd on Sunday, February 28th, 1999. Now, therefore, I, Kirby J. Donnelly, Mayor of the City of Alexandria, Virginia, and on behalf of the city, Alexandria City Council, do hereby recognize and congratulate Earl Lloyd for his historical and successful career with the National Basketball Association. Signed by Kirby J. Donnelly, Mayor, on the behalf of the City Council of Alexandria, Virginia. Also, I have a pen from the City Council from Mr. William D. Ewell, Vice Mayor.
This might be a little tough today because when you get to be my age, you discover sinuses. And between the sinus and the nostalgia, I'm gonna try to work through it. First, let me, from the bottom of my heart, to thank all the presenters. Thank you very much. Now I have to ask a question. Are there any bulldogs in the house? You might recall, what was it, about 3 or 4 years ago, they had the day in Alexandria. And when my wife and I walked into the gymnasium, you might have noticed that on the left side of the gym, it was filled with folks that I had to be very nice to because they've been knowing me for a long time. On the other side was some T.C. Williams folks I didn't know who they were. I had some misgivings. I had some second thoughts about that day because you might recall that T.C. Williams was the superintendent of schools, and we at Parker Gray. And I used to look across the tracks at George Washington High School, and they were talking about separate but equal. I said, boy, you know what I mean? Don't insult my intelligence. We were definitely separated, but I'd be damned we went anywhere near equal. And my wife cautioned me. She said, now look, if you're going, don't go and act like a fool. So I promised I wouldn't. And there's a lot of folks I didn't want to embarrass. But we were out in the lobby talking, my wife and I, we were greeting and hugging and kissing folk, And a young man said, Mr. Lloyd, if you recall, that Friday night, T.C. Williams had a basketball game. And they called and said, would you please come to your seat? The game is getting ready to start. We walked into the gym. And that side of the gym probably gave me and my wife probably a 3-minute standing ovation. If you got a throat, it's gonna be grabbed by that. I was very, very touched. And later not that night, the next day, a young lady from Channel 8, I think that's the local cable channel, if I'm correct, came to the suite. They treated me good now. First motel I ever slept in Virginia, in Alexandria. That's the gospel truth. That's my first time they put me in the honeymoon suite. I don't know why, because young lady came by, and she asked a lot of questions. She said, well, you don't talk a lot about yourself. And I explained that, I've had some 15 minutes of fame. It's time, to kind of reach back and, like Harold was saying, you got to touch somebody. But she asked me, she said, of all the things that you've accomplished, she said, what do you treasure the most? And I explained to her that if she had asked that question before last night, I could have said a lot of things, like maybe being the first from your family to go to college and to graduate. A lot of things I could have said. I said, but let me tell you what's important to me. I said, last night, when I walked in the gymnasium, they gave me a standing O. I said, hopefully they were telling me in their own way that I had become, maybe, just maybe, I had become the kind of person that they expected me to be. And if that was the case, it don't get no better than that. So when you pay tribute to me, when I say Bulldogs, I'm talking about folks that I went to kindergarten with, and that's 65 years ago. And like I'm saying, they know it. I'm very nice to y'all because y'all know some things about me I don't want to get out. Hey, all them teenage picnics and all that stuff. Now, we ain't going there. But that's what has driven me all these years. We all have a worst nightmare. Some folks, they all say, well, dying. No, that's not a nightmare. That's a reality. But my worst nightmare is to let people down that I know care about me. So whatever I accomplished, it was easy for me because I was driven. I was truly driven, boy, because when you leave Alexandria and you go someplace and fail, don't come back home. No, they got no time for you, man. And I understand that because whoever said you can't come back home, they're crazy. Maybe that's for some other folks. But whenever, if I get the feeling that I'm not loved, or I get down the dumps, I come to Alexandria. I like to think that I'm a favorite son there, not because I was a basketball player, not because I was a football player, not because I played pro basketball, but solely because of the kind of person that they think I am. And I want you to know all these years, I can recall my first year in Washington, they put my name in the program and put hometown Washington, D.C. No. That's the gospel truth. I said, no, we got to change that immediately. I said, my hometown is Alexandria, Virginia. And whatever I've accomplished, whatever good has come to me all my adult life, it's because of what I took from Alexandria. There were people there. Helen Day. Let me tell you something. In Alexandria, when you name a postal station after a black elementary school teacher, she got to be heavy. And I submit to you, anybody that came through her doors, if you wrote down who was the toughest teacher you ever had, you go write Helen Day. And if you ask who's the best teacher you ever had, you go write Helen Day. And you might write who's the craziest teacher you ever had. The woman, she had some problems. And she ate nails. And I tried it all. Like many of them said, I just throw water on people. So I tried it all. The woman, and this is gospel truth, And when we were in school, we all know that all our teachers had been fired, child abuse, the whole bit. I disrupted her class, and the woman slapped me out of my seat. And all I had to say to her was, you know, slap me again, but please don't send that note home. Now, most of the folks in here know my mother. Most of them call her Miss Daisy. And boy, let me tell you something. I mean, she was about a 4th grade person, but she valued education. And she always told me that those folks at Parkway High School got what you need, and you can't get it by flapping your lips. And the only time you say anything is when you raise your hand and be recognized, and the teacher points at you, then you can talk. And you better say something like you got some sense. I tried it all. I went home one day and told my mother. I said, Miss Day is picking on me. That was stupid. My mother asked hard questions. She said to me, and in my household, I don't know what's in yours, but when my mother called me Earl Francis, you got a serious problem. When you got the first name and the middle name, now you got a serious problem. So she asked the question, well, how many kids in your class? I said, about 16. She said, now, and this is the buzz phrase, are you telling me, now you're dead in the water, are you telling me that Miss Day walks into a classroom and looks at 16 kids and arbitrarily decide to pick on you? And the next question is, what did you do to attract Miss Day's attention? And I said, well, all I said was, and that's as far as I got. You know, every lesson is a lesson learned. But probably the biggest driving force for me in Alexandria, and I don't like to talk about him because I choke up a little bit. You know what I'm talking about. What's his name? Lewis Randolph Johnson. Class act. Never cursed, never raised his voice, never screamed, but had tremendous presence. When the man walked in the locker room, everything stopped because you knew one thing, that he was going to part with some words of wisdom. And if you stood there for 4 hours and didn't say a word, it was quiet for 4 hours. And the man told us very nicely, he said, look, I'm a normal human being. I make mistakes. You know, I'm not always right, but I'm always in charge. Lesson well taken. But Coach Johnson was truly an inspiration for me. When it was time for me to go away to school, our parents weren't that sophisticated. So I had a lot of scholarship offers. My mother wanted me to go to Howard. I said, no, that's a society school. I can't do Howard. And she understood that. I mean, because normally you didn't tell her what you weren't going to do. She said, well, the next question is, what does Coach Johnson say? Now, if Coach Johnson said this boy's going to mess up you, and I'm cleaning up a little bit, that's where I was going. Coach Johnson was an alumnus of West Virginia State. So that's where he directed me. I had no qualms about it because I knew the man had my welfare at heart. And he definitely picked the right place for me. And sure how lucky I was, most kids leave high school and go to college. They got to adjust to some different philosophies. My high school coach and my college coach went to the same school and played for the same coach and had the same philosophy. So I got 8 years of the same philosophy. This school's a very unique place. Let me tell you how unique it was. My coaches, my high school coach's coach, my college coach's coach, My college coach, meanwhile, his name was Mark Hanna Cardwell. Outstanding. On my campus today, there's a science building named after their coach. Now, tell me that's not unique. Find me a campus anywhere on this earth where there's a science building named after the football coach. Not because they're football coach, because he was an outstanding scientist. I'm talking about Adolph P. Hamlin. But my college coach, this amazing man, extension of Coach Johnson. Coach Johnson kind of guy. We had a guy named Red Jackson, outstanding athlete. I mean, believe me, that's a guy in here from Maggie Walker High School. Their name was the Green Dragons. And let me tell you something, when you went to play Maggie Walker, you need everybody you could muster. You want to be at full force. Coach Johnson said, we're going to Richmond. We're going to leave at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, we get in the cars to go. Red Jackson turns the corner, and the man drove right past him. I asked him, I said, Coach, did you see Red? And all he said was, I saw Jackson. Left him. I mean, a regular, we needed him. But that was a lesson well learned for me. Because when the man said, we leave at 8, that's 7:30 for me. But when he comes at 8, he wants everybody to be there ready to go. Now, my college career, outstanding. And I was asked by a writer. He was a white writer from a big school, so he didn't understand my answer. He said, in your pro career, what sticks out the most in your mind? Now, he expects me to say, I was the first to play, we won a championship. And I told him what sticks out in my mind is that when I was a young black rookie, well, a young rookie who happened to be black, let's change that. Every stop we made, there was somebody there from West Virginia State to support me. So all I'm saying to you is, you Bulldogs, the Yellow Jackets were nothing more than your extension. And I contend that anything I've ever been, anything I'll ever be, anything I ever want to be, I can trace it back to West Virginia State College, right back to Parker Gray High School, right back to Alexandria, Virginia, and more so, right back to a little short lady who in her later years used to say, well, I never touched you all. At Uline Arena, excuse me, mother and father sitting there. Now, I'm not even saying they were proud because, this is their baby child. They call my number and I run out. Now, my mother, understand, was an expert in conflict resolution. Two white guys sitting right behind my mother and father without any regard for them. One guy said to the other, when I came out, he said, do you think this nigger can play any basketball? And my mother, with her infinite wisdom, looked him right in the face and said, trust me, the nigger can play. How can you fail, growing up with somebody like that? You know, she always told me, and very seriously, I mean, this woman was, let me tell you something, it's a shame, my mother, it's a shame that she didn't finish high school and go to college, because she might have been a sitting president. She told me, she said, look, very simple, but very profound. And it's true. You do better when you know better. I mean, it gets on simpler than that. She also told me one time, you know, Alexandria's a small town. And mindset-wise, it was different than most towns. I mean, you know, it's extended family was anybody who's my mother's friend. If they saw you in the street, man, they meant to slap your lips off, man. Something got back to my mother. Very smart woman. She never put me in a position where I could lie. Because she said, well, were you there? I'm saying, no, I wasn't there. No, not me. So she would say, you were there, who was with you, what time it was, the whole bit. Then I confessed, I said, I was there, but I wasn't doing anything. And this is very profound. This woman told me, she said, if you ain't in the picture, you can't get framed. That's where I started. I mean, whoever coined the phrase that your first teacher is at home, I was blessed. And I submit to us today, they talk about role models. I don't totally disagree with Charles Barkley. Why does Charles Barkley have to be a role model for your kid? And I submit to you that if you cannot find a role model under your own roof, which probably dramatizes the problem we have. But I had one. In fact, I asked him in the role models, I could have started an agency. Let me give you an example. Albert Burt's, Eggy, we call it. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. His family was my family. When his dad died, I was right there with them in the big black car. His mother is my mother. That has been, always will be my second family. If I'm wrong, Eggy, you correct me. And don't say the wrong thing. But relationships, let me tell you what, my hometown, it's different. I mean, it is truly, it was just a special place. I mean, we used to walk everywhere. It's unbelievable. We used to walk to Washington. We used to walk to Washington to the Howard Theater. After you got to Washington, you had to walk 5 more miles to get to Howard. And then the sad part, after you enjoyed yourself, you got to walk back home. Pro basketball, your intelligence level was different. I mean, Jackie Robinson had it tough, no question. It was a redneck sport. And most of the guys playing during this time, the first pair of shoes they ever saw were baseball shoes. But in pro basketball, you dealt with most of the college guys. But the fans, they call you names. So this writer said, well, did it bother you? I said, no, it didn't bother me at all. And he was taken aback. Why didn't it bother you? I said, well, first of all, if you're playing well, they call you names. If you're stinking up the joint, they don't even call you to dinner. So I made sure in St. Louis, Missouri, in Baltimore, Maryland, in Indianapolis, Indiana, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, they called me names. Because in those towns, let me tell you something, I played real hard. And I explained to the guy, I said, man, I call him names. I said, man, I was prepared for name calling by experts. Them folks in Virginia? Hell, I was 20 years old before I found out my first name wasn't nigger. Name calling, it's like my mother said, what she said, do not dignify. Yeah, you don't deal with that. But I've been blessed. I have a nice family. I married a girl that, without question, she's the best thing since sliced bread. Ain't no question. I got 3 sons, they're all grown and gone, and They don't call ask for no money. I guess they're doing all right. I think as parents, we all know that's the barometer. Yeah, if they don't call to ask for no money, cool. But if they call and you're able, help them. Let me say this about youngsters. There's a book called, anybody read it, called Die Broke? I didn't read the book, but I read some excerpts. And what it says is, we still making our wills for our kids that when we die, they can get this. And we live to be 100. And your child comes to the funeral, he's 80 years old. Yeah, you know, like Moms Mabley said, you better give him a room. Yeah, because his time ain't long. But what it says is, you know, your children, this is the first generation that kids will not live as good or better than their parents. So this guy is saying that between the ages 20 and 35 is when they need the most help. Because you know now, start a home now, a wiki app costs $100,000. And if you can help them, I mean, as long as they're not being foolish. And I told a story about it. I love kids. Like, you know, Lester Davis back there, he knows my kids. My oldest son, Kenneth, came home from high school. Boys, I don't know what it is. They go crazy at 18. You know, they get angry at the world. They're mad at everything. Fists clenched, teeth clenched. They're just mad. So he came home one day, now I'm in shape. I was in shape then. Told me, man, you can call me man. Man, you can't tell me what to do no more. I'm grown. So, and I learned a long time ago, and I submit to all parents, you ain't got to fight and scream and holler. Because, I mean, you in charge. And I inspired a rock and roll song. I pay the cost to be the boss, ain't no question. Somebody got to, I mean, you gonna let the 18-year-old run your house? It's gonna go under. So he told me I couldn't tell him what to do. I said, you know, I explained to him that the good Lord made us all like doorknobs. And we all gonna get a what? We gonna get a turn. The next day he got his turn. We sat down to eat and there wasn't no plate for him. No, you don't have to fight. No, so he asked, well, where's mine? And I became very officious. I called him by his full name. And I called him Kenneth. I said, Kenneth, you know, the place where you used to eat is still reserved for my oldest child. And the sad part about it doesn't end right here. The place where you used to sleep is also reserved for my oldest child. So now you got a choice, you know. Luckily I didn't raise no dummies or fools. And he became a young man real quick. I mean, the thought of not knowing where his next meal is coming from, where his next bed's coming from, I mean, that'll sober folks up. And I understand, you know, I have a tremendous affinity for young people. I learned that from my mother. My mother would not allow anyone to say to her, these young people don't know what they're doing. She'd always say, if this young person's messed up, some old fool messed them up. And lots of times she's right. You know, and she had no track with anybody. In fact, she used to tell me about, I don't like to be around old people. I said, Daisy, you don't like to be around yourself, you know. And I'm not being disrespectful by calling her Daisy because she allowed us to call her that in my later years. But there's certain things she wouldn't allow us to do. I was 50 years old, came home on a trip, and we were talking. I said, well, oh, hell, Daisy. She called me boy. I ain't say Roy now. And she told me very politely, I've never, ever cursed in your presence. And don't you ever even think about ever cursing in front of me again. And I issue my famous 2 words. What's the famous 2 words to your mother? Thank you. I mean, what else you gonna say? But it's time, you know, if y'all got to be someplace at 7 o'clock, y'all gonna be late. But this is a real pleasure for me. You know, it's a tribute within itself in this kind of weather for this many folks to come out here. And to me, it's a display of some love that you have for me. And all I want to do is respond in kind by being the kind of person you want me to be. In my hometown, well, you got some harsh critics. You know, and they don't expect you, they expect your hat size remain the same. They expect you to still say please and thank you. They expect you to say yes ma'am and no ma'am to folks older than you are, which is hard to find these days. But for my hometown, there are great expectations for the young people. And my time as an athlete in Alexandria was very special times for us because all our parents had to root for was us. And we took special pains. But let me tell you something, my group, I don't know about other groups. Horace Burton, Roger Ware, George Carroll, Earl Bailey, Oliver Ellis, Red Jackson, we entertained them folks. I mean, we entertained some folks. And while I'm up here, I'd be terribly remiss if I didn't mention Oliver Ellis. Very special person. You know, when he passed, Mina called me and told me he had passed in his sleep, you know, and it was a given I was coming, no question. So I called the airport. And I said, no, that's too quick. I need some time to reflect. I rented a car. And it's about a 10-hour drive from Detroit to DC. And I'm telling you, I started reflecting on our relationship. I laughed all the way from Detroit to DC. Now, that's not disrespectful, because if you knew Oliver Ellis the way I knew him, if you mourn him, the boy gonna haunt you. But let me tell you about this young man. He was extraordinary. This guy, and people used to say about how cocky he was, and he was this, you know, I mean, how can you be friends with him? I said, well, you know, we managed very well. I said, every day he told me how good he is, then every Friday he shows me. So, I mean, what's the problem? I said, now if he was a turkey, if he bragged about how good he was Monday through Thursday and bombed on Friday, then, you know, I may reevaluate the situation. This boy, unquestionably, when he went to Howard University, they weren't ready for him. You know, he had beaten up on all these guys. This boy was running with the second unit. I said, man, I don't know who's running with the first unit. It must be Jesus Christ. And sure enough, he was unhappy. So I said, man, we got a place for you. Came to West Virginia, and the rest is history. We were roommates and friends. And, you know, when I was in high school with him, it was hard for me to play because you want to watch him. And I used to watch, football. The boy's a magician. You know, one year, we got a guy, Coach Johnson went to the Army. And we got a guy, I forget his name, but he was a football coach. What was his name? Who? No, it wasn't Steve, no. Now this guy, I can't recall his name, but let me tell you what, this much I remember. We had a game, and he called us up and said, look, we got a game today, so come on downstairs and get your costumes. Coach Henry, am I lying, Eggy? The man said, come and get your costumes. I said, well, at that moment, Oliver Ellis became our coach. Bubba Ellis coached our football team. Yeah, out of sheer necessity. But we had some times. I tell you what, one time, I got to share this story with you. It's a Maggie Walker story. Now, if you know anything about Virginia athletics during my time, Maggie L. Walker or Armstrong High School in Richmond had a lock on the state titles. In 46, we had a shot at it. We had a good shot. We go to Virginia State. One of the referees, now this is also a Coach Johnson story. One of the referees for this championship game was a guy named Catfish Battle. Catfish Battle was 3 years removed from Maggie L. Walker High School. So we kind of felt like we had to ask for another referee. Because, I said, now, in basketball, there are a lot of players that go either way. I said, now, there are a lot of players that might had a chance of going blue and white, but they might go green and white because those are his colors. We go see Coach Johnson. We put the question to him. We said, Coach, could we ask for another referee? And his one word reply to that told us that we did something stupid. He said, why? I said, Coach, the man, now you're on the defense. And the man from Maggie L. Walker, and, he might. So he said to us, and this is a lesson. He said, are you telling me you want me to impugn this man's reputation before a ball has been tossed up? When I went in to see him, I was 6'5". When I left, I was about 4'2". Played the game. They beat us 42-38, never forget it. Probably the best game this man has ever officiated. And we had a tough time. We were right in the ball game all the way, and we lost Rozier Ware to 5 fouls. And Rozier Ware was a real important cog in our wheel. And I submit to you, it might have been different, I don't know. But I like to think if Rozier hadn't fouled out, we had a chance to win it. But that's the Oliver Ellis story along with Coach Johnson's story. And the last thing I said about Oliver Ellis, he was a funny guy, really. The folks who never got to know him, you missed a real treat, I'm telling you. He was a funny guy. I know he could be abrasive sometimes, but we used to go on the road. I'm gonna tell this last story. Mina can appreciate this one. We go on the road, and hotels wouldn't accept us. If they did, we couldn't afford to go because the school, T.C. Williams didn't give us no money. So what would happen is the host team would take 2 players home to sleep in their homes. So that's Bubba Ellis and I go together. So we walk in this room, there's a double bed. And Oliver Ellis says to me, he said, look here, man. And the meeting will tell you I'm not lying. He said, look here, Holmes. He said, now, all night long, it's got to be back to back. And those are the kind of things I was thinking about driving down the highway, And sure enough, boy, you don't make no funny moves. It was hard, boy. 2 big old guys in one double bed to stay back to back. But let me tell you something, all night long it was back to back. In closing, let me say to Harold Bell, Harold's been a friend for a long time. And Harold is right, I didn't chastise folks, but I did make some comments that here's a guy, and I can say this looking you straight in the eye, all he does is give. That's all he does. And I asked the question, I said, man, I don't understand why a lot of folks do all right in D.C., who do absolutely nothing for D.C. And here's a guy, all he does is give, and nothing happens for him. He doesn't have hat in hand, but what I like most about Harold Hal's a warrior. And I tell you about Hal now. He don't ask no quarter. And you heard him, you know he don't give any. And if you're not right, you know, if you're not right, I mean, the man gonna let you know now. And I appreciate that because all I look for in a relationship, and in most relationships, most people look for the same thing. You look for consistency. If you're gonna be a horse's platoon, be one every day. I'm not a deal with you. But Harold has been a warrior, a straight shooter, and a good friend, for all these years. And I sincerely hope that if there's anything anybody in this audience can do to help him, just please, I'd appreciate that. Thank you and good night.
I had a talk with Earl and asked him what he would tell the young people of today.
Well, it's, my mother told me years ago, you can't pass through this life and not touch somebody. And I just feel like there were a lot of people there for me. And there comes a time where you got to cast some bread back on the waters, man. And everybody talks about, our young people, and that's our most valuable resource. It's true. If you don't help these young folks, man, and you can't just denounce them. They don't want to do this. I mean, there are a lot of times, you have a lot of kids, they call you funny names, crying out for help.
Right.
But you got to be able to understand that they're not just calling your name, they're crying for help. So I just feel like, man, I have a tremendous affinity for young people because my folks had a shot at it. My generation had a shot at it. And some material things overtook us, and we lost sight of some direction. I just hope that these new kids, this next generation, man, that they up to the task because they got a lot of things to be straightened out.
So what is one message that you would actually tell young people of today? Is there anything?
Preparation, man.
Prepare.
No question. That's the key to everything. I mean, like this job you have right here. Right. I mean, if you're not prepared, you come here to interview me, you're not prepared, you're going to botch it. Okay? So, it's true. And my mother had a saying, and her saying was, you do better when you know better. And to know better, you got to be prepared.
Earl Lloyd. He won a high school championship, a college championship, and an NBA championship. He was a winner at every level. He was in the United States Army, he scouted for the Detroit Pistons, and also was their head coach. Earl influenced many people's lives, but if you remove the fact that he was accomplishing three-peats at all levels before anyone even thought about it, if you remove the fact that he was the first black to break barriers during the heart of segregation, you come away with a man who possesses professionalism and personal integrity. I'm Derek Limas, and thank you for watching.